Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time, far from the hum of your modern world, right into the opulent, sometimes bewildering, heart of the Ottoman Empire. Imagine yourself, if you will, a silent observer in the sprawling Topkapi Palace, not merely wandering its gilded halls and hushed courtyards, but peering into its more unexpected corners. You feel the cool marble beneath your bare feet as you pad along a shaded arcade, the scent of jasmine heavy in the air. Sunlight, dappled by ancient cypress trees, paints shifting patterns on intricate tilework. But then, a rustle from beyond a high wall, a soft, rhythmic thudding, and you catch a glimpse of something tall, improbably graceful, its long neck craning over the topiary. Yes, you're in the Sultan's private menagerie, and tonight we're focusing on the surprisingly calming presence of the Ottoman giraffes. You probably won't survive a single day trying to navigate the palace intrigues, let alone remember to bow correctly to the Grand Vizier. But at least you'll have a wonderfully unique bedtime story to tell yourself. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It always helps me bring more peculiar corners of history into your sleepy orbit. And as you settle in, let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see how far these quiet historical whispers travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in the shadow of the mighty Topkapi Palace, its domes and minarets silhouetted against the perpetually hazy Constantinople sky. The air, thick with the scent of spices and distant charcoal fires, carries the faint, unidentifiable chirps and rustles of creatures that certainly don't belong in Istanbul. You might hear the distant cry of a peacock or the low growl of something decidedly more substantial, but the sound that truly captures your attention, the one that makes you tilt your head in sleepy curiosity, is a soft, almost imperceptible chewing, accompanied by a rhythmic, gentle swaying. You crane your neck, just a little, your eyes adjusting to the dimming light, and there it is, a giraffe, not a drawing, not a vague story, but a living, breathing, utterly serene giraffe, munching on leaves from a strategically placed tree within the palace grounds. It's an image that defies your modern expectations of a royal court, an anachronism that feels both absurd and profoundly calming. This wasn't some fleeting attraction. These magnificent creatures were, for a time, a surprisingly regular feature of the Sultan's private world, and their presence here, so far from their native lands, tells a story far more intricate than you might imagine, a story steeped in diplomacy, prestige, and perhaps a touch of royal eccentricity. It's a tale that stretches across vast deserts and churning seas, a testament to the immense power and curious desires of a sultan who could command such wonders. Think of the sheer logistical puzzle, for instance, of bringing such a towering beast all the way from the heart of Africa to the shores of the Bosphorus. It wasn't like ordering a new carpet for the divan hall. Historians still argue whether the primary motivation for these exotic acquisitions was purely symbolic, reflecting the Sultan's dominion over distant lands, or if there was a genuine fascination a protozoological curiosity at play. For you, standing here, it's simply a moment of quiet awe, watching a creature so out of place, yet so perfectly at peace in its unlikely home. You feel a gentle breeze, a distant call to prayer drifts over the city, and the giraffe continues, its slow, deliberate chewing, utterly unconcerned by the historical weight of its surroundings. Your gaze follows the giraffe, a silent, stately silhouette against the twilight. But how, you wonder, did such a magnificent creature even get here? The journey of an African giraffe to the court of an Ottoman sultan was no casual stroll through a local park. It was an epic, multi-stage odyssey beginning deep within the sun-baked savannas of what we now call Sudan or Egypt. Imagine you are there, in that distant, arid landscape. The air shimmers with heat. The ground beneath your sandals is parched and cracked. You hear the distant roar of a lion, but your focus is on the long, languid strides of a giraffe, its coat a mesmerizing mosaic of browns and creams. These weren't simply captured, they were often diplomatic gifts, carefully selected and transported. The initial phase involved skilled hunters, local tribesmen who knew the terrain and the animals intimately, gently coaxing a young giraffe, or perhaps even a pair, into a contained area. This was a monumental task in itself, requiring immense patience and a deep understanding of animal behavior. A far cry from modern tranquilizer darts and sturdy transport crates. You can almost feel the tension in the air as they slowly guide the towering animal, step by careful step, towards the Nile. This wasn't a quick operation. It could take weeks, involving temporary enclosures and constant vigilance against predators. Once secured, the real challenge began, the river journey. Imagine the sheer ingenuity required to get a creature of such size onto a boat. These were likely custom-built barges, reinforced and stable, designed to accommodate the giraffe's height and weight. You're watching as ropes are carefully secured. Perhaps even a gentle ramp is constructed from earth and timbers. The boat itself would be a marvel of ancient engineering, wide and flat-bottomed to navigate the Nile's shifting currents. As the giraffe slowly ambles aboard, perhaps a little unsteady, you hear the creak of the timbers and the gentle lapping of water against the hull. The air cools slightly as the sun begins to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues. For weeks, sometimes months, the giraffe would travel down the Nile, a majestic passenger on an ancient waterway, an utterly bizarre sight for the villagers and fishermen along the banks. Think of the logistics, keeping the animal fed with appropriate foliage, ensuring it had enough fresh water, protecting it from the elements, and maintaining its health in a confined space. It wasn't a simple matter of throwing some hay into a corner. Giraffes have very specific dietary needs. This wasn't merely animal transport, it was a living, breathing diplomatic mission. Historians still argue whether the journey itself led to significant losses of these precious animals, or if the selection and care were so meticulous that survival rates were surprisingly high. You can almost hear the soft splash of the oars, the murmur of the crew, and the gentle sigh of the giraffe as it gazes out over the endless riverbanks. A silent, extraordinary passenger on its way to a new, impossibly grand home. The journey was an odyssey of patience and extraordinary effort, a true testament to the value placed on these unique royal gifts. You might even chuckle at the thought of a crew member trying to explain to a passing boat why their vessel was carrying a creature usually only seen in distant lands. Once the giraffe reached the Mediterranean coast, the journey transformed again. Imagine the bustling port city, perhaps Alexandria or Beirut, a cacophony of sounds and smells. You're standing on the quayside, the air thick with the scent of salt and spices, the cries of vendors mingling with the creak of rigging and the shouts of sailors. The giraffe, now perhaps a little weary from its river voyage, is being carefully transferred onto a seagoing vessel. This wasn't a simple matter of loading cargo. It was a complex operation requiring specialized equipment and considerable manpower. Think of the ingenuity required to create a stable platform, a kind of floating crate that could be hoisted onto the ship without harming the animal. You see ropes being meticulously arranged, pulleys groaning under the strain, and a crowd of onlookers, their faces a mixture of curiosity and awe, watching the spectacle. This wasn't a routine shipment. It was a diplomatic event, a symbol of the Sultan's power and reach. The ship itself would have been a substantial vessel, perhaps a galleon or a large merchant ship, adapted to accommodate its unusual passenger. You can almost feel the sway of the deck beneath your feet as the giraffe is carefully secured, its long neck perhaps extending above the ship's railing, an utterly surreal sight against the backdrop of the open sea. The journey across the Mediterranean was fraught with its own challenges. The weather could be unpredictable, storms could rage for days, and the constant motion of the sea could be unsettling for the giraffe. Think of the crew, their days filled with the mundane tasks of sailing, now also responsible for the care and well-being of this extraordinary creature. They would have needed to ensure a constant supply of fresh water and appropriate food, perhaps even constructing a makeshift shelter on deck to protect the giraffe from the elements. This was a logistical puzzle on a grand scale, a testament to the lengths the Ottoman court would go to for these symbols of prestige. Historians still debate the exact routes taken and the types of ships used, but the sheer scale of the undertaking is undeniable. You might even imagine the captain, a seasoned sailor, scratching his head as he tries to explain to a fellow captain why he has a giraffe as his most important passenger. The journey itself was a statement, a demonstration of the Sultan's ability to command resources and overcome logistical hurdles. As the ship finally approached Constantinople, the silhouette of the city rising in the distance, you can almost hear the collective sigh of relief from the crew. The giraffe, after its long and arduous journey, was finally nearing its new, opulent home. Having survived the epic river and sea voyages, the giraffe finally arrived in Constantinople, the jewel of the Ottoman Empire. Imagine stepping off the dusty streets of the city and into the serene, walled gardens of the Topkapi Palace. You notice the air instantly changes, becoming cooler, perfumed with exotic blossoms. Here, nestled within these tranquil grounds, the giraffe found a surprisingly pampered existence. This wasn't a barren cage, it was an enclosure designed with care, reflecting the Ottoman love for nature and beauty. You might see lush foliage, perhaps specially imported trees, providing both shade and sustenance. The ground would be soft, well maintained, a far cry from the harsh, rocky terrain it had traversed. The giraffe, now a permanent resident, would have been housed in a purpose built structure, likely an elegant pavilion open to the air, offering protection from the elements, but allowing it ample space to move and stretch its magnificent neck. Think of the attention to detail, fresh water constantly available, a varied diet of leaves, grasses, and perhaps even some specially prepared feed. You can almost hear the gentle crunching as it munches on its preferred greenery, utterly at peace. The care for these animals was meticulous, reflecting their immense value not just as curiosities, but as living symbols of the Sultan's prestige. This wasn't just about survival, it was about ensuring the creature thrived. Contrast this with the treatment of animals in other parts of the world at the time, where menageries were often cramped and unsanitary. The Ottoman approach, at least for these prized creatures, seems to have been remarkably enlightened. You might even spot a dedicated attendant, perhaps a stern looking eunuch or a kindly gardener, carefully monitoring the giraffe, checking its health, and ensuring its comfort. These caretakers would have become intimately familiar with the animal's habits and temperament. Historians still argue whether the perceived pampering was purely for the animal's well being or primarily to maintain its pristine appearance for diplomatic displays. Regardless, for the giraffe, it was a life of relative luxury compared to its wild existence, a testament to the Sultan's command over resources and his appreciation for the exotic. You might even wonder if the giraffe, with its calm, unblinking gaze, ever longed for the vast savannas it had left behind, or if the gentle rhythms of palace life had completely won it over. Beyond its physical comforts, the giraffe in the Ottoman palace wasn't just a pet, it was a potent symbol, a living, breathing emblem of the Sultan's immense power and prestige. Imagine you are a foreign ambassador, perhaps from Venice or France, granted an audience with the Sultan. As you are ushered through the grand courtyards, past the meticulously manicured gardens, your eye catches an impossibly tall, graceful creature peacefully grazing. You gasp, subtly, because you know what this means. This isn't just an animal, it's a statement. It broadcasts the Sultan's wealth, his reach across vast continents, and his ability to command the impossible. The giraffe, native to far off lands, represented the extent of Ottoman influence, demonstrating that the Sultan's power stretched even to the distant horizons of Africa, where such exotic creatures roamed free. It was a living, breathing testament to the empire's dominion, a subtle but undeniable assertion of global power. Think of it as the ultimate flex, long before anyone ever said flex, while other European monarchs might boast of their extensive libraries or their impressive armies. The Ottoman Sultan could casually display a giraffe, a creature so rare and exotic that its mere presence in Constantinople was a marvel. It was a tangible representation of Ottoman mastery over trade routes, a vivid demonstration of their diplomatic connections, and a quiet boast about their logistical capabilities. You might even chuckle at the thought of a European envoy frantically writing back to his monarch, describing this unbelievable sight, perhaps slightly exaggerating its size for dramatic effect. The giraffe also served as a diplomatic tool, a gift of unparalleled value that could solidify alliances or impress visiting dignitaries. Imagine the whispers, the awe, the polite astonishment among those who had never seen such a creature outside of fantastical tales. Its very existence within the palace walls underscored the Sultan's divine favor and his unparalleled authority. Historians still argue whether the symbolic value of the giraffe outweighed its practical upkeep costs, but there's little doubt it was a highly effective piece of living propaganda. For you, observing this majestic animal, you feel the weight of centuries of power and the subtle, almost hypnotic allure of the exotic, all wrapped up in the gentle, swaying presence of the giraffe. It's a moment where history, power, and a peculiar form of animal husbandry converge into a remarkably calming image. While the giraffe often steals the spotlight with its sheer improbable presence, the Ottoman Sultan's menageries were far from one giraffe shows. Imagine you're strolling deeper into the palace grounds, perhaps down a winding path shaded by ancient plane trees, and the sounds around you become even more eclectic. The distant squawk of a parrot, the low rumble of a larger creature, the piercing cry of an exotic bird you can't quite identify. The Ottoman court, much like other grand courts of the era, harbored a fascinating array of exotic animals, each a testament to the empire's vast reach and the Sultan's limitless resources. You might encounter lions, their powerful roars echoing surprisingly through the otherwise serene gardens, perhaps pacing in a grand, barred enclosure. There would be tigers, too, brought from the eastern reaches of the empire or as gifts from distant lands. Think of the sheer audacity of keeping such powerful predators within the very heart of the palace, a constant reminder of the Sultan's absolute control, even over the wildest of beasts. Beyond the big cats, you'd likely find a colorful collection of birds, from resplendent peacocks strutting their iridescent plumage on manicured lawns to cages filled with chattering monkeys and parrots. These creatures, with their vibrant colors and playful antics, would have added a lively, almost whimsical touch to the otherwise formal palace atmosphere. You might see a monkey snatching a forgotten piece of fruit from a passing attendant, causing a ripple of quiet amusement. Some accounts even mention crocodiles, brought from the Nile, lounging in specially constructed ponds. Their ancient, scaly forms, a stark contrast to the delicate palace architecture. Imagine the whispered tales of how these fearsome reptiles were captured and transported, adding an element of thrilling danger to the royal collection. This diverse collection wasn't just for show, it reflected a genuine interest in the natural world, a protozoological curiosity that predated modern scientific classification. Historians still argue whether the collection was purely for entertainment, a symbol of power, or if there was an underlying, albeit nascent, scientific interest in understanding these diverse species. Regardless, you're enveloped in a living, breathing testament to the Ottoman Empire's global connections, a menagerie that served as a microcosm of the known world. It's a slightly chaotic, utterly captivating experience, a sensory overload in the most delightful and sleep inducing way, reminding you that even in the most formal settings, life finds a way to be wonderfully, unexpectedly wild. Now, who cared for all these exotic beasts? It certainly wasn't a job for just anyone. Imagine you're peeking into the quieter corners of the palace, perhaps near the stables or the kitchen, and you spot a group of individuals, their clothes perhaps a little earthier, their hands showing signs of hard work. The menagerie staff, often an eclectic mix of skilled animal handlers, former hunters, and even eunuchs, formed a dedicated, if sometimes peculiar, cohort. Their lives revolved around the meticulous care of the Sultan's living treasures. You might see a grizzled old man, his face weathered by years in the sun, patiently coaxing a reluctant monkey from its perch, or a younger attendant diligently preparing buckets of fresh water and armfuls of greens for the giraffe. These individuals possessed specialized knowledge, often passed down through generations. They understood the temperaments of different animals, recognized the subtle signs of illness, and knew how to maintain the complex enclosures. Think of the unique challenges. A lion might need fresh meat daily, a parrot might require specific fruits, and a giraffe, with its towering height, presented its own set of husbandry hurdles. It wasn't just about feeding, it was about enrichment, cleanliness, and ensuring the animals remained healthy and content. You can almost hear the quiet murmurs of conversation between the handlers, perhaps discussing a new diet for a gazelle or a minor ailment affecting one of the peacocks. The hierarchy within the menagerie staff would have been clear, with head zookeepers overseeing the day-to-day operations and reporting directly to higher palace officials. This wasn't a casual side gig. It was a serious profession, demanding constant attention and a deep commitment to the welfare of these valuable creatures. Historians still argue about the exact origins and training methods of these specialized handlers, but their expertise was undoubtedly crucial to the survival and well-being of the exotic collection. You might even imagine them swapping stories in the evening, perhaps a bit of gentle humor about the giraffe's surprisingly loud yawns or the tiger's occasional playful swipe. It's a reminder that even in the grandeur of a royal court, there were dedicated individuals performing the quiet, essential work behind the scenes, ensuring that the Sultan's impressive menagerie continued to thrive. As you observe the meticulous care given to the giraffe and its companions, a thought might drift through your sleepy mind. What did animal welfare even mean back then? Our modern understanding of animal care, with its emphasis on spacious enclosures, species specific diets, and veterinary science, is a relatively recent development. For the Ottoman handlers, animal welfare was likely viewed through a pragmatic lens, intertwined with the animal's value as a diplomatic asset or a symbol of power. You're watching as a handler gently strokes the giraffe's flank, checking for any abrasions or signs of discomfort. Their methods, while perhaps not scientifically rigorous by today's standards, were born of empirical observation and a deep, practical knowledge gained from generations of working with animals. Think of the challenges: no easy access to veterinarians specializing in exotic animals, no vast global supply chain for specialized feed, and limited understanding of complex nutritional needs or disease prevention. Yet, these animals often survived for years, even decades, in the Ottoman menageries. This suggests a level of attentive care that, for its time, was quite remarkable. You might see the daily routine of cleaning enclosures, ensuring fresh bedding, and providing ample space for movement, all crucial for the animal's health. The handlers would have learned through trial and error, observing what made their charges thrive and what caused them distress. For instance, understanding the giraffe's need for tall browse trees, rather than just ground level fodder, would have been a critical, if intuitive, discovery. Historians still argue whether the level of care afforded to these exotic animals was driven by genuine affection and empathy, or if it was primarily a practical consideration, ensuring the longevity and impressive appearance of valuable royal assets. You might even imagine a mild mannered handler whispering reassuring words to a particularly restless lion, a testament to the personal bonds that could form between humans and beasts. While we might wince at some of the historical practices, it's important to remember that their intentions were likely good, aimed at preserving these living wonders. It's a gentle reminder that even without modern science, humanity has always sought to connect with and care for the animal kingdom, albeit through different lenses. Amidst the grand symbolism and logistical marvels, there are whispers, soft as the rustle of silk in the palace gardens, of sultans forming genuine, personal bonds with their unique pets. Imagine a moment when the formal demands of statecraft recede and a powerful ruler, perhaps Sultan Mehmed IV, known for his love of hunting and animals, steals away to his private menagerie. You might picture him standing quietly before the towering giraffe, a serene smile on his face, perhaps even offering a special treat from his own hand. These weren't mere exhibits. For some sultans, these animals were companions, a silent, comforting presence in a world of endless political maneuvering and heavy responsibilities. Think of the sheer isolation that could accompany ultimate power. A sultan, surrounded by courtiers and advisors, might find true solace and uncomplicated companionship in the steady gaze of a giraffe or the playful antics of a monkey. You can almost feel the gentle rapport, a connection transcending language, built on simple observation and quiet interaction. There are anecdotes, though sometimes embellished by chroniclers, of sultans spending hours observing their animals, finding a peculiar peace in their natural rhythms. This wasn't merely about owning a rare creature, it was about experiencing a connection, a brief respite from the weight of the empire. It's easy to imagine a sultan, weary from endless petitions and diplomatic wrangling, finding calm in the soft chewing of a giraffe or the gentle preening of a peacock. Perhaps the giraffe, with its calm demeanor, served as a living, breathing meditation point, a majestic anchor in a world of constant flux. Historians still argue whether these accounts of deep personal affection are romanticized exaggerations or genuinely reflect the private emotional lives of these powerful rulers. You might even chuckle at the thought of a stern grand vizier waiting impatiently while the Sultan lingered a little too long, admiring his favorite gazelle. Regardless of the exact depth of emotion, the very notion of such bonds adds a wonderfully human touch to the grand narrative of the Ottoman Empire, reminding us that even sultans sought comfort and connection in the quiet corners of their magnificent world. The presence of such extraordinary creatures, especially the giraffe, naturally sparked whispers and superstitions within the palace and beyond its walls. Imagine the hushed conversations among the palace servants, the curious glances from passers-by in the city who might only catch a fleeting glimpse. For many, these exotic animals, particularly those from distant, unknown lands, would have seemed almost mythical. You might overhear a servant recounting a tale, perhaps slightly embellished, about the giraffe's supposed magical properties or its ability to bring good fortune to the Sultan. In a world where scientific understanding was still nascent, the unusual was often attributed to the supernatural. Think of the giraffe's unique height and serene demeanor. Some might have seen it as a creature blessed with extraordinary wisdom, its long neck allowing it to literally see beyond the mundane. Others might have viewed it as a symbol of divine blessing, a sign of the Sultan's favor in the eyes of a higher power. These beliefs, while perhaps not officially sanctioned by the court, would have circulated freely among the common folk, adding another layer of mystique to the already legendary ruler. You can almost feel the collective awe, bordering on reverence, that these majestic animals inspired. There might have been superstitions about their behavior, too. A giraffe's contented chewing could be interpreted as a sign of peace and prosperity for the empire, while any sign of distress might be seen as an ominous omen. Historians still argue whether the palace officials actively encouraged these superstitions to further enhance the Sultan's mystique, or if they were simply a natural byproduct of popular belief. You might even chuckle at the thought of a court astrologer trying to divine the future based on which way the giraffe was facing that day. Regardless, these whispers and superstitions contributed to the overall aura of wonder and power that surrounded the Ottoman court, making the giraffe not just an animal, but a living legend, a calming, almost hypnotic presence in the realm of belief. The giraffe, a creature so unlike anything native to the Ottoman lands, inevitably found its way into the empire's artistic and literary expressions. Imagine you're in a hushed library within the palace, perhaps leafing through a beautifully illuminated manuscript, its pages filled with intricate miniatures. And there, amidst scenes of sultans on horseback or courtly life, you might unexpectedly discover a depiction of a giraffe, its long neck elegantly curved, its spotted coat rendered in exquisite detail. These artistic representations weren't merely whimsical additions. They served to document and celebrate the rare animals housed within the royal menagerie, preserving their image for posterity. Think of the artists, perhaps scribes and miniaturists, attempting to capture the likeness of a creature they had never seen before until it arrived at the palace. They would have studied its form, its movements, its unique proportions, striving for accuracy even as they imbued it with an almost ethereal quality. These depictions weren't always perfectly anatomically correct by modern standards, but they conveyed the giraffe's majesty and exotic allure. You can almost feel the delicate brush strokes, the painstaking application of pigments as a skilled hand brought the animal to life on parchment. These artistic records provide invaluable insights into the appearance of these historical giraffes and the way they were perceived by the Ottoman court. Beyond visual art, the giraffe also occasionally appeared in written accounts, in official chronicles, and perhaps even in more informal poetic verses. While not a recurring character in epic poems, its unique presence was noteworthy enough to be mentioned by chroniclers detailing the Sultan's gifts or the wonders of the palace. Historians still argue whether the written accounts were purely descriptive or if they also aimed to impress readers with the Sultan's wealth and global connections. You might even chuckle at the thought of a court poet struggling to find a rhyme for giraffe that fit the meter. Nevertheless, these artistic and literary mentions ensured that the memory of the Ottoman giraffes, those serene giants, lived on long after they had faded from the palace gardens, a gentle reminder of a time when living wonders were captured not just in cages, but on canvas and paper. The journey of a giraffe from Africa to the Ottoman court was often initiated not just by the Sultan's personal desire, but as an act of profound diplomatic significance. Imagine yourself as an envoy from a distant land, perhaps an Abyssinian prince, arriving in Constantinople with a grand gift for the Sultan. But instead of jewels or gold, you present a living, breathing giraffe. This wasn't merely a flamboyant gesture, it was a carefully calculated move, a high status offering designed to forge alliances, solidify treaties, or simply curry favor with the most powerful ruler of the age. You can almost feel the weight of expectation on your shoulders as you guide the magnificent creature through the city streets, a walking, breathing testament to your ruler's respect and generosity. Think of the sheer effort and expense involved in acquiring and transporting such an animal. It wasn't something easily procured or replicated. Therefore, its presentation as a gift underscored the importance of the diplomatic relationship. A giraffe wasn't just a spectacle, it was a symbol of trust, a tangible expression of goodwill between nations. You might picture the hushed awe of the court as the giraffe was unveiled, the murmurs of approval, and the immediate understanding of the immense value of such a present. This was a gift that spoke volumes without uttering a single word, demonstrating the giver's reach, resources, and respect for the recipient. These living gifts served to strengthen bonds and facilitate negotiations. A sultan receiving such a rare and impressive creature would undoubtedly be more inclined to look favorably upon the giver's requests. Historians still argue whether the primary motivation for these gifts was genuine admiration or strategic political maneuvering, but the outcome was often the same: strengthened diplomatic ties. You might even chuckle at the thought of a grizzled diplomat trying to explain to his counterpart why a giraffe was a far more valuable gift than a treasury full of silver. For the Ottoman Empire, these giraffes, whether acquired or received, played a silent but significant role in the intricate dance of international relations. Their calm presence underscoring the empire's global standing. As centuries passed and the world around the Ottoman Empire began to shift, the grand era of maintaining vast, exotic menageries within the palace grounds began to decline. Imagine the slower pace, the gradual quiet that might have settled over the once vibrant animal enclosures. You might notice fewer attendants bustling about, perhaps some of the elaborate structures falling into disrepair. This wasn't a sudden, dramatic abandonment, but a slow fading influenced by a confluence of factors. One significant reason was the changing geopolitical landscape. As the empire's focus shifted and its power waned in certain regions, the steady flow of exotic animals as gifts or tribute became less reliable. The vast networks that facilitated the transport of creatures from far flung lands became harder to maintain. Think of the immense cost involved in feeding and housing these animals, especially the larger ones like giraffes or lions. With economic pressures mounting on the empire, the resources dedicated to maintaining such elaborate collections likely diminished. It became increasingly difficult to justify the expense of exotic animal husbandry when other, more pressing matters demanded attention. You can almost hear the quiet debates among palace officials about budget allocations, weighing the symbolic value of a giraffe against the needs of the military or infrastructure. This shift reflected a growing pragmatism within the court. Furthermore, evolving attitudes towards animal care and the emergence of more formalized zoological gardens in Europe might have subtly influenced practices in the Ottoman Empire, though perhaps at a slower pace. The idea of housing animals for scientific study or public display, rather than purely for royal prestige, began to take root. Historians still argue whether the decline was primarily due to economic constraints, changing political priorities, or a gradual shift in cultural attitudes towards animal collections. You might even chuckle at the thought of a tired bureaucrat finally deciding that perhaps a painting of a giraffe was more cost effective than the real thing. Regardless, the Grand Menagerie, with its silent, serene giraffes and roaring lions, slowly receded into the annals of Ottoman history, making way for different expressions of imperial power and prestige. Despite their eventual fading from the palace grounds, the legacy of the royal beasts, and particularly the giraffes, lingered in the collective memory and historical accounts of the Ottoman Empire. Imagine a descendant of an old palace servant centuries later, still telling tales of the majestic giraffe that once graced the Sultan's gardens. You can almost feel the quiet reverence in their voice as they recount stories passed down through generations. These animals, once living symbols of imperial power and global reach, transformed into fascinating footnotes in the grand narrative of Ottoman history. They became part of the empire's unique cultural tapestry, a testament to its opulence and its connection to distant lands. Think of the way these stories, both oral and written, would have cemented the image of the Ottoman sultans as rulers of unparalleled wealth and influence. The giraffe, so unique and instantly recognizable, became a memorable anecdote that underscored the empire's peak power. You might come across an old travelogue penned by a curious European visitor, describing the astonishment of seeing a giraffe in Constantinople, solidifying its place in the broader historical imagination. These accounts, though perhaps sometimes exaggerated for dramatic effect, ensured that the memory of these extraordinary animals persisted. Historians still argue whether the lasting impact of the giraffe was primarily due to its striking visual presence or the intricate diplomatic and logistical efforts involved in its acquisition. You might even chuckle at the thought of a modern day tourist guide pointing to a historical engraving and saying, and yes, they really did have giraffes. Here, ultimately, the royal beasts, especially the serene and towering giraffes, left an indelible mark on the Ottoman psyche, becoming a quiet, almost dreamlike part of its rich and complex history, a gentle reminder of a time when the world was both vast and intimately connected by curious imperial desires. Now, as our journey through the quiet corners of Ottoman history draws to a close, feel your breath slow, your thoughts soften. Imagine that serene giraffe, its gentle eyes gazing out over the Topkapi Gardens one last time, its incredible journey from the sun-drenched savannas to the opulent palace, a testament to a world both grand and peculiar, filled with strange beauty and quiet power. You recall the careful hands of its handlers, the awe in the eyes of foreign dignitaries, the whispers of its mythical significance, each detail, a soft thread weaving into the tapestry of your sleepy mind. The faint scent of jasmine still lingers, perhaps mixed, now with the calming aroma of old parchment and distant rain. The sounds of the palace fade, replaced by the soft hum of your own quiet space, the rhythmic flow of your breathing. There's no need to hold on to any specific image. Just let the feeling of that historical stillness, that gentle immersion, wash over you. The giraffe has found its peaceful rest, and so shall you. Drift further, deeper, allowing the quiet stories of the past to become the gentle currents that carry you into slumber. Every long-necked journey, every meticulously cared-for detail dissolves into a comforting haze. Feel the calm settle over you, a profound sense of peace. The world outside, with its busy demands and rushing thoughts, recedes. You are simply here, in this quiet moment, enveloped by the stillness that follows a good story, soft whisper from history. Let the echoes of the giraffe's serene presence guide you, a gentle, silent companion into the landscape of your own dreams. The grand domes, the bustling bazaars, the diplomatic dances all melt away, leaving only a profound sense of quietude. Rest deeply, knowing that even in the most surprising corners of history, there is always a calm, comforting presence